Chapter 22, Melora. Rita, that's my girl. More like my baby. Evil bitch. Real-time integrated tactical analytics. Mainframe computers and programs powerful enough to run a war. Remove the human element with all its biases, neuroses, and hidden agendas? Great idea, right? But what's that saying? The road to hell is paved with good intentions? The war was already fucked before we brought Rita online. We weren't losing, but we weren't winning, which meant we were losing. Every month, a different admiral or general showed up at IPI, looked over our shoulders, and asked a few dumbass questions. None of them knew shit about computers, and all of them looked scared. They had no fucking clue what Rita could and couldn't do, but they all wanted to believe she could win their war for them. So after every visit, they flew to DC and told the politicians Rita was the answer. And after every visit, the politicians wrote more checks made out to IPI. Believe me, IPI kicked back plenty of that taxpayer money to the politicians. Toby wasn't the only one who taught me history. The Navy did too. At least, their version, long before Toby hacked his way into my life. But Chief Cavaney, veteran of 2 hot underwater wars and 1 cold one, told me the military history he thought counted, and the old chief told me straight. For my arthritis, he'd say, downing his 5th shot of wild turkey in the dark back booth of Spanky's, a Pensacola dive bar popular with us blue jackets. Then he'd go off on his favorite subject, officers. You see, Mel, they ain't like us. We just want to keep our frickin' noses clean and do our frickin' jobs. Officers? They're all on the make. Little politicians hooked on moving up the ladder, all of them with their noses shoved up the butts of the guy on the rung above them, 'cause that's the only way up, and all doing it so the guy on the rung below them will stick his nose up their butts. Come on, Chief, I'd say. They're not all like that. Not all, Mel, but the good ones hardly ever make it to the top. They can't, because making it to the top means sticking your nose so far up the real politicians' butts that you forget what daylight looks like. It means lying about everything to keep the politicians happy, lying so much you forget what the truth is. Lying about things like what it will take to win a war, or how many boys and girls are going to wind up dead. Lying about how we're winning the war, lying to yourself about how we're winning it, so the politicians can lie to the voters. 'Cause if you don't go along to get along, you ain't never going to get another little star pinned on your lapel. I met a good senior officer once, guy who got me into the Navy, and he was a pilot and a wing commander in Vietnam. Well, sure, Mel, sounds like a real warrior. I've known some great ones in my day, but honestly, those guys ain't shit in the big picture. They ain't shit because they don't have the president's ear, and the only ones who've got the president's ear are the ones who tell him what he wants to hear. The further they go up the chain of command, the higher they climb on that ladder, the less they want to take responsibility. They don't have to win wars, they only have to avoid the big mistakes that'll get them fired. So they live their lives terrified they're going to make a big mistake. At first it makes them cautious. That ain't a bad thing, because in the short run, it means less of us get killed. But after a while, it makes them timid, then scared, then positively chicken shit. And in the long run, that means a whole lot more of us get killed. I thought about that while Chief Cavaney ordered another round. This time he sipped at his whiskey, swirling it between swallows so the ice cubes tinkled against the side of the glass, eyes focused on something in the distance, or maybe something in the past. I drank my bottle of Bud, sitting quietly because I felt like saying something now would mean butting in on the chief's private conversation with himself. After a long few minutes, he downed the rest of his drink and shifted his gray eyes back to me. Winston Churchill said that if you take the most gallant sailor, the most intrepid airman, or the most audacious soldier, put them at a table together, what do you get? The sum of their fears. I never thought he was talking about sailors, airmen, and soldiers in the field. I thought he meant the ones who climbed that brown-nosing officer ladder so high they get a seat at the table. And I always thought it was those sons of bitches who lost us that fucked up war in Vietnam. Them and the lying bastards in the White House they answered to. When IPI put Captain Rusk in charge of the cybergrammar group handpicked to fix the shit show Rita had become, and make the billions Congress had poured into her start paying off, the captain called us together for a meeting. If you could program Rita to be one thing, he said, what would it be? Fast, Coop said. Ooh, and sexy. Everyone laughed at that, the way Coop always got us laughing. More seriously, Caprice, a girl who'd been hired fresh out of some Ivy League school and made cyber grammar almost as quick as me, said, "Smart." Ron, the former All-American quarterback from Utah, raised his hand to speak, as usual, even though everyone else had, as usual, jumped right into the conversation. "Down the hall and to the left, Ron," Coop said. Even Ron laughed at that one. But this time, Captain Rusk didn't join in. "Go ahead, Ron. What's the one thing you'd program Rita to be?" "Adaptable." "And you, Ted?" Ted, the ex-Marine, with the bulldog neck and the bulldog tattoo, didn't hesitate. "Deadly," he said. Captain Rusk nodded. "What about you, Melora? What one thing would you want Rita to be?" Coop and Caprice wanted Rita to do what computers were best at, process billions of bits of data at speeds millions of times faster than any human commander, and spit out the results so others could act on them. But doing more of what wasn't working and doing it faster wasn't the answer. Ron and Ted wanted something better. So did I. That's when I remembered what Chief Cavany said back in Pensacola. Remembered his Churchill quote about the sum of all fears. "Fearless," I said. "I want Rita to be fearless." Okay, so given my fucked up childhood, maybe I was projecting. But that's when I decided that Rita might make mistakes, but she'd never be afraid. So we went to work, and we did it. We made Rita fast. We made her smart. We made her adaptable. We made her deadly. And I made her a cold-hearted bitch. And I never worried about that, because Rita didn't make decisions, only suggestions. It was up to humans to decide whether to act on them. Flesh and blood commanders could always make the compassionate choice if the Silicon Maiden went too far. You see, I understood Rita. My problem was, I didn't understand people. If I'd thought more about what Chief Cavany said, I wouldn't have been surprised when commanders rubber-stamped Rita's suggestions. Wouldn't have gone along when her suggestions were treated like orders. Wouldn't have been so fucking proud when the generals, admirals, and politicians took the safeties off and let Rita, without any human interference, run everything from recruitment to logistics to ops. In other words, the whole goddamn war. Of course they trust Rita, I thought. She's better at this than they are. And she's better because we made her that way. But that wasn't it at all. Commanders didn't turn the show over to Rita because they trusted her. They did it because they were scared. If they let Rita do her thing and it worked, they got the credit. If it didn't work, Rita got the blame. But if they overruled her and things turned out badly, it was all on them. Rita had become the sum of their fears.